Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Books and Books. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Steve Moss. I'm the manager here at the bookstore. On behalf of everyone here, we welcome you. To those of you who are watching on the internet, you will see these cameras and lights around the store, so you know we are live streaming this event as we do many of our events here at Books and Books. If you are watching on the internet, you can always call the store and get a signed copy of the book before the end of the event. We'll ship it to you anywhere in the U.S. for free. Overseas might be a little bit more. But if you could turn off your cell phones, anything else that's going to ring out or sing out, we'd appreciate that. And while you're doing that, please take a look at our Books and Books newsletter. This will give you a rundown of all the wonderful events we have at Books and Books just like this every day of the week. A couple of note upcoming, Dave Barry, James Gruppando, T.D. Allman. As I say, you can pick up a copy of this or you can go to our website, booksandbooks.com. We'll send you an email blast and notate you of everything that's coming up in the store. But it's my distinct pleasure this afternoon to introduce our introducer for our author this afternoon. Don Sleznick served as the mayor of Coral Gables for 10 years. He also served as the president of the Florida League of Mayors. He continues as the managing partner for the law firm Sleznick and Casey. Prior to this, he held management positions with the Dade County Public Schools and the Dade County Police Department. He's a fellow of the College of Labor and Employment Lawyers and a member of the Florida Academy of Professional Mediators. He was included in the Best Lawyers in America list and named one of the South Florida's top lawyers. He's presently serving as a member of the American Bar Association's House of Delegates and holds an ABA presidential appointment at organization's Commission on Civic Education in the Nation's Schools. Don's a Vietnam veteran and former U.S. Navy advisor to NATO forces in Germany. He retired from the Army at the rank of lieutenant colonel and now serves as the chief of Army Reserve as one of its ambassadors. He's been active in numerous civic and business organizations, which include the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce Executive Committee. It's my pleasure to welcome this afternoon. Please welcome Don Sleznick. Told you.
I promise, Sam, I did not write that for them to use. That's well, here we are. For those of us who grew up in this great city, this is an incredibly interesting afternoon. Many of you, as I, have been to the Miami Stadium or Bobby Maduro Stadium in later years, and have that is a part of our lives. And the reason I am wearing some of the paraphernalia I am, because we're going to get to the Marlins with Sam in a minute, but the Miami Stadium, if you talk about the Marlins or the forgotten Marlins, which are not forgotten to some of us, you think of the stadium too, and the games that you see in the stadium. And I'm wearing my Yankees, and by the way, this is hot. I want you to know, Sam, I am doing this for you under these lights. This is a real warm-up jacket. And the fact is that I watched the Yankees play there, as many of you have, and got this jacket at the stadium. And so this brought back this memory, and I dug it out of the closet today to come down to introduce Sam. And this is my St. Louis Cardinals hat, which reminds me, it's signed by Rene Arocha, as a matter of fact, a great young pitcher. But this reminds me of a game that I was at when my daughter, who I hate to admit is now 41 years old, when she was a little tyke, and Steve Lake was catching that day for the Baltimore Orioles. He went on to play for the St. Louis Cardinals, though, and there was a pop fly that came off the home plate area and right to the top of my daughter's head as she was a little infant. And Steve Lake came over and in a lunging grab caught the ball at the top of her head, which sent her into conditions which saved her life probably, and the fact of the matter was we still have that ball to this day. So it is an incredible thing to get together to talk about the Miami Stadium, and of course what brought us the Miami Stadium to the light of many of us was the Miami Marlins. And we have a person with us today who is an expert on the Miami Marlins, and he's going to bring to you the facts from his book, The Forgotten Marlins. And, of course, by the time we leave here and by the time people turn off their computers watching this live streaming today, they will not be forgotten anymore. And we're especially proud to have with us an old friend of mine from high school here who Sam's going to talk a little bit about, but it's Tim and Agnes, and he was the first bat boy of the Miami Marlins, the very first bat boy, and later you'll see pictures of him in Sam's collection. And I know he doesn't look that old, but he was a very young bat boy. He was a very young bat boy. So anyways, Sam Zygner and I had the opportunity to go to a Miami Marlins game earlier this year, the new Marlins, which may soon be forgotten. But anyways, at the moment we know who they are. But Sam is a person who studies baseball, who knows baseball in and out, and thank heavens he turned his attention to the Marlins so that he could revive them in our memory and bring them back to life. Sam was born in West Virginia And he grew up in Pittsburgh, where he became an avid Pittsburgh Pirates fan and a lifelong attraction to the Pittsburgh Pirates. So that brought him into the baseball field. And for the last 17 years, Sam has been a member of the American Society for American Baseball Research. And for the last 7 years, he has been the South Florida chairperson for the chapter down here. And then he came to the point in time where not only doing the research and bringing together people to talk about baseball was not enough for him. And so he turned his attention to writing, and he has produced this great book, The Forgotten Marlins, 1956-1960. And with that, I'd like to bring on and introduce to you Sam Zygner.
One of the perks you get as a writer is you get introduced by such super nice guys as Don Slesnick, who really is a pillar in the community, and I appreciate that, Don. We're very honored today, as Don mentioned. Tim Anagnost is with us today, and just to give you a little background on Tim, Tim is a local boy who made good. He's a Stingaree, graduated from Miami High School, went to the U of M, was an attorney, a successful attorney, and is now retired. But he lived and breathed the Marlins back in the day. He was with them in 1956 and came back for a second tour in 1957. So later on, after the presentation, Tim's going to share a story with us, and then we're going to answer some questions about the Marlins. So I always start out by asking everybody, how many of you knew, before you came today, that there was an original Miami Marlins going back to 1956? Okay. I found that interesting because as I started to, prior to writing the book, and I was doing the research, and even during the actual writing of the book, I was amazed by how many people that I spoke with that were not aware that there was a Marlins back as far as 1956. Most people, their memories start in '93 when the Florida Marlins started. But indeed, there was a team in 1956. And the team had a 5-year run up till 1960, but in those 5 years that the team existed, let me tell you, they packed in a lot of life and a lot of baseball. And they had quite a collection of characters on this team. Everything from your baseball royalty to your baseball rogues. And just to let you know about some of the players who played for the Marlins, or I'm also going to mention a manager or two. Satchel Paige pitched for the Marlins for 3 years. Now, some of you, most of you probably know who Satchel Paige is. But Satchel Paige is probably the greatest pitcher that ever lived. And he pitched for the Marlins for 3 years. Not only did he pitch for the Marlins, he pitched very successfully. And he was in his 50s by then when he came and pitched with Miami starting in 1956. Also, who I call the first Mr. Marlin, everybody thinks of Jeff Conine as Mr. Marlin. But the first Mr. Marlin was this gentleman right here, Woody Smith. Now, Woody Smith, the best way I can describe Woody Smith is they cast him right out of a Western movie as the hero riding on a white steed. The guy was perfection. He was a master at third base playing the field. And he was beloved not only by his teammates, as Tim would tell you, but by the fans. And Woody had a 5-year stay. He was one of 2 Marlins that actually played all 5 seasons while the team was here in Miami, the other one being John Anderson, who was a pitcher. But Woody was really the star, and he was like, if you were to name a captain on the team, Woody Smith would have been the captain of the team. Also, some other players that you might recognize who played for the Marlins. Pancho Herrera, who was a very big star in the Cuban Winter Leagues. He was there 57 and 58. Pepper Martin was not a player, but he was a manager. And Pepper Martin was a character of his own right. Now, Pepper Martin, of course, he was a baseball man, but sometimes he would show up at the games. He raced midget race cars on the side. And he'd show up at the games sometimes with grease and oil all over his uniform, if you can believe that. And he would come and he'd smoke his pipe in the dugout, but the fans loved him. A lot of the reason why they loved him is he had a history in Miami. He used to manage the old Miami Beach Flamingos and the Sun Sox. And he used to have a lot of famous confrontations with umpires. So the fans, besides his personality, kind of attached themselves to Pepper, who
always socialized with the fans in the field. Also, you had a gang of guys who were a bit roguish, were the Dalton Gang. That was Seth Moorhead, Jim Owens, and Turk Farrell. Now, these guys were regular pranksters, and they was all in good fun, and they liked to party a little bit. And they were part of the Marlins in the very first season. And they even had a lot of back and forth with Satchel Paige, but Satchel gave it right back to him. So it was a lot of clean fun, and the players had a lot of fun with that. And in the closing days of the Marlins, there was also a pitcher by the name of Mcdermott, who was very famous. He was characterized as the typical, and he admitted himself, he had a 10-cent head and $1 million arm. The guy, they said he could throw a fastball through a brick wall. But he liked the ladies. He liked to party. He had a few scrapes with the law in Miami. And he was one of the characters that was part of the Marlins amongst many. The Marlins Beginnings are interesting in themselves because the Marlins really started out of a pure coincidence. And it all started, we're going to go back in time to the winter, actually December of 1955, to Columbus, Ohio. And I'm going to introduce somebody who was very integral to the Marlins. He's going to come in a little bit, but you'll see. And this gentleman, his name is Bill Beck. And Bill Beck, as some of you might know, was a famous baseball promoter. When you go to the games nowadays and you see the scoreboards lighting up and the fireworks, the in-between inning entertainment that you see, he was the forefather of all this stuff. He started all of this. So anyways, just to back up a little bit, we go into the winter of 1955, and a gentleman by the name of Sid Solomon Jr. and his business partner, Elliot Stein, traveled to Columbus, Ohio, to close a deal on a restaurant, a business deal from St. Louis. Now, Sid, he lived part of the year in St. Louis. He was a St. Louis guy, but he also lived in Miami, and he loved Miami. At the same time, they were holding the minor league winter meetings in Columbus, Ohio. And a gentleman by the name of Don Haskey, who owned the Syracuse Chiefs, they were a AAA affiliate to the Philadelphia Phillies. He was in Syracuse. He was in town for the meetings, and he was in the restaurant at the same time that Solomon and Stein were. So what happens is Solomon is sitting at his table. He's having a nice dinner, so forth, and he's discussing all the amenities about Miami, how wonderful it is. It's a great place. And the topic of conversation comes up about Toledo, Ohio, who was a member of the American Association. They had turned down an offer to relocate the team to Miami. So Solomon says, you know, if I had a team in Miami, I could make a go of it. I'm giving you a kind of encapsulated form here. I can make a go of it. Well, according to Bill Beck, Haskey reaches over across from the other table. He taps Solomon on the shoulder, and Haskey says, "Sir, you've got yourself a team." And that's how the Marlins, according to Bill Beck, were born. So Solomon, with his partner Stein, went ahead. They arranged to buy the team. And, of course, when they realized the gravity of the situation they were in, Stein and mostly Solomon realized, we got to get some help here because I never owned a team. They never owned a team before, and they had no experience, and they were basically in over their heads. So what Solomon did is he went to his old pal, Bill Beck. Now, Bill Beck had previously owned major league teams in Cleveland and St. Louis, but at this time he was out of baseball. Bill was very much against the grain with his promotions in baseball. At this time, owners were very staunch conservative, so they were more than happy to see him ushered out of Major League Baseball. When they moved the St. Louis Browns from St. Louis to Baltimore, they didn't let him go with the team, unfortunately. So Bill wasn't doing anything really at this time. So Solomon comes to Bill and he says, "Can you help me with this?" So Bill Beck comes to Miami. He brings some of his cronies with him. They sign a deal to lease the stadium, Miami Stadium, and I'm sure most of you know about Miami Stadium. At the time was like the state-of-the-art ballpark for minor league baseball. And they sign a deal for the stadium, a lease. And Beck brings along two important people. Bill Durney, who had been a broadcaster in St. Louis when Bill Beck owned the Browns and helped him with his promotions. One of the main promotions he helped him with was, you might have heard, the midget, when the midget came to bat in a game for the St. Louis Browns. He was one of the forces behind that. And he also brought a ball player. But the players didn't know who this person was, or no mention of it. And who do you think that ball player was? Satchel Paige. Satchel Paige. So immediately Beck gets into town. He starts promoting the team. He gets in the papers, starts publicizing the team. He brings some of the early players he signed along with him, such as Sid Gordon, some of the old Browns players. He also runs a contest in the Miami Herald for a bat boy. And this is where Tim will come into the picture. And maybe he'll tell us a little bit about that later. But that was part of Bill Beck's thing. He liked to involve kids in the sport, not only the adults, but to get the kids involved in the game of baseball. And Bill Beck had this amazing, deep love of baseball that you don't see in very many people. But he was really a special person. Excuse me. So Bill Beck comes into town, and the big highlight, he wants to kick off the team in a big way. So they have opening night at Miami Stadium against the Buffalo Bisons. Okay. Bill has a stadium decked out in red, white, and blue banners. He's got fireworks going. One of the Miami high school bands is in the stands playing music. He has a tightrope walker on the old light fixtures. They look like erector sets. He strings a wire across there, and a woman is tightrope walking. And all the players are introduced. They turn the lights off on the field, spotlights. They introduce each player by their position. It's a big gala. And the game begins. And so the fans start to settle in their seats and get ready for the evening's game. Okay, this is the stuff. We've seen it. And all of a sudden, they look up and they start noticing one of those bubble-top whirlybird helicopters. It's circling the stadium, and it's slowly coming down. And so people are wondering, what's going on? What's up with this? And it comes down as it gets close to the infield. The air from the blades is blowing the infield dirt everywhere. Everywhere. And it even gets out on the fans out in the stands. And the players scatter. Thornton Kipper, who was the opening night pitcher, by the way, for the Marlins, there's a little trivia for you, runs off the field. The helicopter comes down right behind the pitcher's mound in the infield. And the door opens, and guess who pops out? Satchel Paige, yeah. Satchel Paige pops out. And as Jack Spring told me when I interviewed Jack Spring, he was one of the pitchers. He said Satchel's eyes were as big as saucers. And Satchel said that he became very close friends with that pilot when he was flying into that stadium. So Satchel pops out, and Bill Beck has a big, comfortable, easy chair set up in the bullpen. Satch goes out, he sits in the bullpen, and the game goes on. The Marlins, by the way, win on opening night, which is perfect. But the fans are left with something to question. Is Satchel Paige going to pitch, or is this just another one of Beck's gimmicks? Well, Beck didn't bring Satchel in just to be a gimmick. He brought him in to be an integral part of the team. But Don Osborne, who was the manager at the time, wasn't so sold on this. Now, Paige was 49 years old on opening day. He would turn 50 during the season. But Don had to be convinced. So what Beck did is he said, Don, line up your best 9 hitters, and if any of them gets a hit off of Satchel, I'll give him $10. Remember, this is 1956 $10. And these players aren't making the kind of money like they do now. And so Don agrees to this. He says, okay. And he says, you make the decision if you want to keep Paige or not. All right. So this goes back to when Beck did the same thing in Cleveland. When Lou Boudreau was the manager of the Cleveland Indians, he gave him the same challenge. Don lines up his best 9 hitters, and nobody gets even a foul tip off of Paige. Paige is dominating. Don changes his mind, and Satchel Paige is on the team. Now, what's really interesting, Paige was 50 years old then. And remember, the International League was one step below the major leagues. The Marlins would be an affiliate of the Philadelphia Phillies in the International League. But with the 16 teams, you want to remember that the talent pool was a little bit more concentrated. And if you look over the rosters during this time, nearly every player on the rosters of the 8 teams in the International League, either players had been in the major leagues or were going to be in the major leagues shortly. So Paige was facing some stiff competition. These weren't like lower minor league hitters. These were guys with major league experience, a lot of them. Paige that year would go up, pitch, I believe it was 111 innings, had an 11-4 record, and you ready for this? A 1.86 earned run average at 50 years old. And the 3 years that he was in Miami, he was a quality pitcher all 3 years. Quality pitcher. And really, he was probably the best pitcher on the team, with no doubt. I mean, he was dominant, basically. Now, I wanted to touch on one other thing about that season, which a lot of people asked me about, which was the Orange Bowl game. How many here are aware of the Orange Bowl game? Okay, a lot of you. That's good, good. Beck, what he had wanted to do is he had his sights set on breaking the minor league record for attendance, which was 56,000. Went back to 1941 to Jersey City. And Beck had one problem, of course. There was no venue to play the game in a baseball field that was that big. But there was one venue in Miami that would. What do you think that venue was? Orange Bowl. So Beck negotiated a deal with the Orange Bowl. He shoehorned in a baseball stadium into the park. And it was rather unique. It was 216 down the right field line. I think it was 236 down the left field line, and about 330 to center field. He built a big screen which went around the whole outfield, which was about 12 feet high, and they had a ground rule that if a player hit a ball over the screen, it was a double, ground rule double. If a player was able to reach the grandstand, which was farther out, it would be a home run. And Bob Bowman, who I interviewed, actually in the game, said that he was playing so shallow in right field that he was able to throw a runner out on first. He was basically playing a shallow or a deep second base. That's how small the dimensions were. But Paige pitched in the game. To entertain the fans, he brought in the likes of Margaret Whiting, Cab Calloway, an actress who was very famous back in the day, Gloria DeHaven. He had Dixieland bands. I'm trying to think. Oh, and Merv Griffin was one of the entertainers also at the game. Merv Griffin. So the game goes off, and Paige agrees to pitch the game under one condition, that he doesn't have to fly in a helicopter, which was perfectly agreeable to Beck. And the game went off, and interestingly enough, they were expecting an offensive outburst. But actually in the game, only one home run was hit. And a gentleman by the name of Benny Tompkins hit a home run in the first inning into the grandstand, and that was the only home run in the game. Paige pitched 7 1/3 innings that night. He finally ran out of a little steam late in the game, and they didn't get any more than a double off of him in the game. And finally, Jack Spring actually came in and relieved Paige and got the last 5 batters out, and the Marlins won the Orange Bowl game. Now, as far as the attendance, it's interesting because the Sporting News actually reported that he broke the record, 57,713. In actuality, there was going to be 51,713 at the game. He fell short of the paid attendance record, but he broke the record for actual fans in the stands because the Jersey City game, was during the war years, and they sold a lot of tickets to raise money for the war effort, obviously. So in actuality, they only had about 28,000 fans who were bodies in the seat, whereas the Orange Bowl, there was 51,713. And if you go into the Orange Bowl, and if you go down the third base line of the main entrance, there's a wall that honors the Orange Bowl, and you'll see Satchel Paige on the pitcher's mound, and all you see behind him is the stands full of attendees. It's really something. So Paige obviously was a big part of the team. Now, the reason why the Marlins had such a short life, and those of you who are Florida Marlins fans will relate to this, is each year there was a problem with the lease of the stadium. And pretty soon the owner would say, as an example, George Storer was the second owner. Because of health reasons, Sullivan had to sell the team after the first year. Storer, every year, would threaten to move the team if he didn't get a a lease that was appropriate. Well, it would go back and forth, and eventually they'd settle on something, but usually it was a little more than George Storer was interested in. And that put a financial strain on the team. And the fans were a little turned off because, well, were they threatening to move? Are they going to be here next year? Sound familiar? Also, the Marlins did not own the concessions. The Jacobs brothers owned the concession rights. So the Marlins' ability to earn money was somewhat constrained. And, of course, there was always the weather. People complained about the weather. And when their income is constrained, they had less ability to sign quality players. Now, the first 2 years, the Marlins made the playoffs. The first year, they got knocked out in the first round. The second year, they went to the championship and got knocked out. But after that, they got decidedly worse in the last 3 years that they were here, unfortunately. And that played a part in the success of the team because fans came out less and less. Bill McDonald, who was the final owner of the team, and I'm going to wrap this up, just give you this brief history. He had the team in 1960, the last season, and he had the same problem that Storer did. And what he did is he agreed to move the team to Puerto Rico following the 60 season. So 1960 was the last year that the Marlins were here, the original Marlins. He moved the team to Puerto Rico. This is a good story. I like to share this, what happened. And he got a sweet deal with TV rights and so forth, but nobody came to the games in Puerto Rico. It was a bust. So he immediately, Bill, picked up the team and he moved them to Charleston, West Virginia. The team was so strapped for money, they kept the name Marlins, if you can believe that, and they attributed it to a Marlins hunting rifle. They couldn't afford to buy uniforms for the team in West Virginia. And that's kind of where the trail of the Marlins ends. But I wanted to leave some time for Tim, actually, so that he could share a story with you all about the Marlins, maybe two. It's up to you, Tim, whatever you feel comfortable with. And after Tim tells you a little bit about his experiences with the Marlins, what we want to do is open it up for questions, because a lot of people, where I've spoken in the past, they always have a lot of questions about the original Marlins, the players, the team, so forth. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Tim and let him share a story or two with you.
You know, as Sam was talking, I just flashed back to those days, and I vividly remember some of the things that Sam was saying. One of the really vivid memories that I have is that helicopter incident. We were in the third base dugout, and there was no clue as to what was going to happen. All of a sudden, this helicopter lands, and the dust got so severe that you could not even see the helicopter. And out of this dust storm, like Lawrence of Arabia, this long, lean black man is walking out of there. I don't know who it is. And he comes out of this dust storm and he starts to go towards the dugout. Then the dust follows him towards the stands. And the people that night, it was opening night, as Sam said, the people that night were all dressed up. The men were dressed in coats and ties, and the women were dressed to kill. I mean, they were all dressed up. And as that dust started towards the stands, you heard some of the unbelievable profanity that came out of the stands. A lot of it from the women, I'm sure, because it was ruining their clothes. And it was right behind, because they're right behind the third base dugout. I remember hearing them with all these cuss words and everything with regard to this dust. So that's one memory I have that's really kind of funny. Another thing that Sam left out, which I thought was very, very interesting, is the Orange Bowl game and what happened with Satchel Paige at bat. Satchel Paige was, as Sam said, 50 years old at that time, and he never hit the ball. I mean, you know, he was a pitcher, great pitcher, but he wasn't a hitter. But he had the requirement as a bat boy. I had a special bat that Satchel Paige had put his initials, a magic marker, on the handle of the bat, and if he gets into a game, I have to get that bat. And that bat's usually not out with the rest of the bats. It's back in the clubhouse, or in the clubhouse area. They have like a big cage that has all the bats of all the players, and then only the starters and the people that are going to get into the game, you would take those bats and you would bring them out to the field. And slot them according to whatever the batting order was, but you didn't take the bats of people that weren't in the game. The other thing was that pitchers didn't have their names on the bats, but I don't know if you all knew this, but the AAA players, just like major leaguers, when you all went out and bought a bat as a kid, you'd get a Ted Williams bat or you'd get a Babe Ruth bat or whatever with the name on it. Well, Louisville Slugger made bats with the players' names on them. So in AAA, the player had his name on the bat. They didn't make bats for pitchers. So Satchel Paige had to commandeer somebody else's bat to put this magic marker on it. And he's very serious about his hitting, and he strikes out every time. And I've got to get that bat if he's going to be in the game. Now, the Orange Bowl game, he was starting, so I had the bat out there at that time, the bat that he had commandeered. He gets up with the bases loaded, I believe it was in the second inning of the game. And the pitcher on the, was it the Jets, the Columbus Jets? Bob Kuzawa was a former major leaguer and an excellent pitcher. And Satchel Paige gets up with the bases loaded and hits a ball between the left fielder and the center fielder. He hits the ball. First of all, that's a shock, right? Then the ball is between the left fielder and the center fielder and starts rolling. And we're on the third base side, and I'm looking out and watching the ball roll past the outfielders, and it just keeps rolling and rolling. They had played way in for him. And I'm figuring, Satchel Paige just got up in the Orange Bowl and hit an inside the park home run. This is incredible. And I'm thinking that to myself, and I'm watching the ball roll, and then I look back into the infield, and Satchel Paige is literally walking into second base. He did get a double. He drove in 3 runs, which turned out to be the winning runs in that game. And it was just absolutely hilarious. And apparently, I think it's in the book, Sam, that Bob Kuzawa was laughing, just turned around and looked at him and was laughing hysterically, yeah. And he and Satchel Paige were laughing. So there are a lot of memories I have, and those are just a few. And it was just a lot of fun. Satchel Paige was a very nice man. He was also a character. He would show up, and this is my final story that I told Sam I would tell. It was the Marlins played double headers. One game would be 7 innings. The other game would be 9 innings. That was the setup in the International League at that time. It was the second or third inning of the second game of the double header when I get an usher gets my attention on the third base dugout, and I go over to the usher to find out what he wants, and he explains to me that I need to go in and open the clubhouse door because Satchel Paige wants to get in to get dressed for the game. It's the second or third inning of the second game. Everybody, all the ball players are supposed to be there at least an hour and a half to 2 hours before the first game. And Satchel Paige is now wanting to get dressed and me open up the clubhouse door. So I go back and I open up the clubhouse door, and Satchel Paige comes in and he says, "What inning is it? What's the score?" Things like that. And he starts getting dressed, and I go back out to the field. And I'm thinking to myself as a little kid, I'm thinking, oh, the manager's really going to be upset. Don Osborne was a manager, and he is really going to be angry with Satchel Paige coming and showing up at this hour, And Satchel Paige comes out through the tunnelway into the dugout. Don Osborne immediately sends him down to the bullpen, and he comes in relief in the game. Doesn't say anything bad to him or anything like that, but he does come in relief in the game. And it was just, he missed a plane to Havana when we flew to Havana to play the Havana Sugar Kings, who were in the International League at that time. So he chartered his own plane, and he came down there. So he was unique, and it was a lot of fun, and it was quite an experience for me. Thanks. This is the 1956 team. I'm sitting in the front right there. And more importantly, Leroy Page's autograph is right here, and that's my signature next to him. So I got a lot of status out of that. And this is Pancho Herrera, and this is I'm shaking hands with Woody Smith, who's just hit a home run, and Pancho Herrera is shaking his hand as well. The real skinny kid that's there. That's me. And then there's Jimmy Fox, who was one of the coaches the first year for the Marlins. Jimmy Foxx was a legendary major leaguer. I mean, he hit, what, 58 home runs, I think, that behind Babe Ruth is the only one that had more home runs at the time. And he was a phenomenal player. And he coached the team the first year when I was there. And that's a ball bag, and that's he and I there. So the memories are so vivid for me, and they're so much fun. And I've gone on to do a lot of other things, but I will never forget those times.
We're going to open up questions for the audience, but I did want to especially thank Mitch Kaplan and everybody here who was so gracious at Books and Books for allowing me to share my book with you all today. And as a first-time author, I really appreciate it. And I really encourage everybody to support Books and Books and independent bookstores like Books and Books, because they are going away, and there's nothing better than buying a book and coming to Books and Books. My wife and I, Barbara, have been coming here for years, and encourage you all to support your bookstore. Also, I want to thank everybody who is watching live stream. I know that my parents and my uncle, my mom and dad are watching, and I want to say hi to them and my Uncle Jack and Jan. So let's open it up. We'll open up for questions. Tim's going to join me also, so questions if you have for either one of us. Yes?
How do you feel about the current Miami Marlins and how they ripped off the taxpayers?
Well, I'm just thankful we have baseball in Miami. I'm not going to comment on the financial issues and so forth, but I'm just thankful that we have Major League Baseball here and a quality stadium. And he's a businessman.
How old am I? Oh, I hate to. Oh, I was 13 back then. I'm 70 now.
Look good.
Yes, sir.
Do you remember the names of the kid or kids that did the manual scoreboard? Because the stadium was one of the last stadiums in the country.
No, I don't. I knew the ball boy's name was Haggerty, and the visiting team bat boy was Jeffrey Green, but I don't know who did the manual scoreboard. Speaking of the scoreboard, I have one quick story that about the quality of the players that played at that time that Sam was referring to. Luke Easter. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Luke Easter, but he was a great power hitter, big black man, a left-handed hitter. Well, he and Satchel Paige would always exchange words when they were when Luke would come up to bat in a game that Paige was pitching in, and they would go back and forth. Luke Easter hit the longest home run I ever saw hit at Miami Stadium over the scoreboard. The scoreboard was in right field. And he hit one, and nobody would hit the ball out in right field. And I didn't find out until many years later that apparently the wind currents were such that it was very difficult to hit a ball out, a home run in right field. I had never seen a ball go out in right field, nor have I ever seen a ball go further than that ball went that day against Satchel Paige. And Satchel Paige stared him all the way around the bases, and they kept talking to each other. And then the next time up, he struck him out.
Did you travel with the team, like when they went to Havana?
Only to Havana. The Miami Herald had sponsored a contest that I was fortunate enough to win, and part of the reward for that was one away trip, and that was to Havana. We stayed at the Nacional in Havana, and everything was first class. AAA was just next to Major League at that time, and it was really interesting. Almost got shot down there. What happened very quickly? I didn't do this, Cameron.
No, go ahead.
I decided to tour the area, and it was just before the Revolution. It's 1956, and I went out towards El Morro Castle. I wanted to see El Morro Castle from where I was walking, and all of a sudden I hear tss, and I look up, and there's a Cuban sailor with a rifle pointed at me, not up in the air, they pointed at me. Apparently I'd walked in an area I didn't belong in. Put my hands up, backed up, and he just followed me all the way until I got out of there. So that was, and the other experience there was in the Nacional. I had a 13-year-old kid. I was playing in the slot machines in the casino.
Where did you gather all this material, and how did you choose what stayed in the book and what did not?
After I graduated school, I went back to school and got my master's degree, and I had some free time on my hands because I didn't have to study anymore or write papers. So what I did is I decided I want to write a book, and I ran around quite a few different ideas what I wanted to write about. But when something doesn't hit you, you don't want to go into a project unless it's something that really turns you on. So anyways, when all the Marlins were going on and the new stadium issue started and they were talking about the stadium, I got to thinking, it hit me, what about the original Marlins? Because I had scant knowledge about the Marlins. I knew, of course, Satchel Paige had pitched there and they were in the International League. But to be honest with you, I didn't know all that much about them, just very surface knowledge. So what I did is I started, first of all, I went down to the library downtown. I started looking through microfilm, reading the old articles from the Miami News, which is gone now, the Miami Herald. And after that, I started making notes, putting the information together. But the most exciting part of writing the book was I contacted the players, and I also contacted, which I think it makes the book even more special, I contacted some of what I would guess you call personnel, like Tim, who was the original bat boy, and Bill Durney's son. Bill Durney, by the way, was a broadcaster with the Marlins, who Beck brought along from St. Louis, and he teamed up with a guy named Sonny Hirsch, and they did the Marlins games back in the day. So that was really when I started getting into the interviews and compiling that with the newspaper accounts. I read books on people who actually experienced the Marlins in that day. Obviously, in Satchel Paige's, a couple of his books, he talks about his Miami experience. As I started to get in, I started compiling the information. I put it together. It took me 2 years to write the book. And let me tell you, I'm still in contact with some of the ball players today that I interviewed, which is really cool.
Tell you guys, it's a wealth of information in that bit.
I remember you came to the Miami Book Fair.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. When he comes down in the helicopter, was that supposed to be a big surprise grand entrance that we have Satchel Paige, or was it known who's going to be on the roster? Was that like a big surprise? Look who's playing for the Marlins now, it's Satchel Paige?
No, nobody knew about it.
Okay,
None of
that's
the
a big
players
surprise.
knew about it. In fact, every player that I spoke to that was a teammate of his on that team that I interviewed, one of the ball players, I don't remember if it was, I think it was Tommy Qualters, he made the comment that he thought, oh, that son of a gun just took my job when Satchel Paige. But no, none of the players, only a few people in ownership and management knew about it. It was a complete surprise. The press had no idea. The fans had no idea. The players certainly had no idea. And it was a big shock to Tim. You had no idea that he was coming in. But of course, when he came out of the plane, people recognized who he was because he's an icon, face it, in baseball. He's a legend. And people knew who he was.
Reminds me of a grand LeBron James entrance that went completely wrong. You know, like Miami's had its grand entrances. That one kind of, I guess, missed.
Well, Satchel was pretty nervous up in the helicopter. If you read his accounts of the event, he was very friendly with that pilot. They were holding on for dear life. So, yeah, it was a surprise.
Satchel has some interesting quotes that he put out there, like, what is it, just because no one's gaining on you doesn't mean you're following you, what is it? Something like that.
Yeah, never look back. They might be gaining on you.
They might be gaining.
Yeah.
So he was quick with that, quick.
You know, I had a chance, actually. I was at the Miami Book Fair. This gentleman was actually at the event, and I shared the podium with Don Spivey right here. Don is a professor at the U of M and wrote a book about Satchel Paige. But we had the good fortune of Robert Page was on our panel with us, who is Satchel Paige's son. And that was very, very special, not only for myself and us, but everybody. Well, you'll attribute to being in the audience that day. It was really cool that he was there.
I have one other Satchel Paige story, because just to show how good a sport he was. This kind of shocked me too. We were in the clubhouse, and the uniforms, they were stand-up lockers. So you had the uniform hanging in the locker, and you had a little nail for the hat, and you hang the hat there, and then the shoes were on the floor. They had nailed, the players had nailed Satchel Paige, and this is in the book, I believe. Yeah. They had nailed his shoes to the floor, nailed his uniform to the wall, nailed his cap to the wall. Everything was nailed down, and he couldn't, and he walked in and he didn't even get upset, didn't react poorly at all. He was there's a thing that you can understand with ball players. If they like you, they will tease you. They will do all kinds of things with you. If they don't like you, then they're not going to have anything to do with you. They liked Satchel Paige, and he liked them, obviously, and they got along very well in the locker room. that was one of the pranks they played on him. They would play pranks on him pretty
how
often.
How old was Satch?
He was 50 at the time.
He was 50. That's
Yeah.
we knew the age, because I thought that was a problem.
Yeah,
So-
they went back finally and recreated all that, and I believe they finally documented it correctly that he would have been 50 in 1956.
And he was
when-
pitching.
And he was pitching well. He wasn't just pitching, he was
He was
pitching
very
well.
effective. In fact, he was the best pitcher on the team probably in '56.
So that wasn't his reported age.
That was,
You went
at
back and
that
found
time, nobody knew his age. Nobody, and I don't think he would tell anybody his age. Now, going back, I think recreating it, they found out that he was 50 at the time. And he pitched the next 2 years, as Sam said.
Very effectively. And he always played upon that when he was a player.
They actually played up that he was older, and he wouldn't tell anybody his age, and that was part of his whole aura, I guess you would say. And people were always trying to guess his age and find something that would nail it down. But they did actually, and Don would attest to this, that they actually did find his birth certificate at one time, and it was July 7th, 1906 was his birthday. Yeah.
What happened to him after 3 years at the Marlins?
After that, he went back to barnstorming. He actually pitched in the major leagues one more time. He came back in September of 1965. Charlie Finley, who owned then the Kansas City Athletics, signed him to a contract. He came back and pitched an inning and spent enough major league time that he got his pension, because he was a little short of his pension time. And he came back at, he would have been, what, 59 then? 59 years old. He pitched in the big leagues. Can you believe that? 59 years old.
And Bill Beck had a relationship with Satchel Paige. They were, you know, I think he spent time with the Cleveland Indians at one point, and I think Beck was
St.
involved
Louis Browns,
in that too. And then, of course, Eddie Goodell, the midget with the St. Louis Browns, was a whole different thing. But Bill Beck was also a very nice man, and had a wooden leg. A lot of people didn't know that about Bill Beck, but he just very, very good to kids. I mean, I was 13, and he was just very, very cordial to me and very nice. And that was just, these memories are incredible. Really.
How long did the Marlins stay in West Virginia?
Not long. I don't know the exact time period, but minor league teams in those days, because of the way the setup was, they may not stay anywhere very long. They weren't there long.
What city was that?
Charleston, West Virginia. Yeah. Actually, my dad, because I was born in West Virginia, he actually went to games back then. Drove from Huntington and saw Charleston play when they were a member of the International League back in the day.
I see a jersey over there.
Yeah.
That's the away jersey.
Show that. This is
That's
a
amazing.
reproduction of the Marlins road jersey. Interesting story about this. The company that makes this, I don't mean to say it's Evansfield Flannels, but Paige was actually number 29. Bob Greenwood was number 26. He wasn't quite as good a pitcher as Paige.
Well, you know, Don Slesnick is probably responsible for the fact that my uniform from when I was bat boy is now on display at Miami at the new stadium there. They have a place called a Diamond Club in there, and they have the uniform, and they have some of these pictures you've seen, and pictures of Satchel Paige. One picture of him in the Orange Bowl, but not the one you're talking about, but another one in the Diamond Club. But thanks to Don, he did some influential politicking for me. I had the uniform, and we were able to get it put up there at the stadium with a little plaque underneath it, and it's all because of Don.
Did you work for the Miami Orioles minor league team?
No. The only thing I did was with the, and that's a kind of a funny story too, because there was the contest in the Miami Herald was anybody who entered the contest was going to get 2 free tickets to a Marlin game, and the Marlins were going to open up that year. This is the beginning of the AAA Marlins. And so I said, well, I'll enter the contest because I want to get the 2 free tickets. So as it turned out, it was a contest where you had to write in 25 words or less why you wanted to be bat boy. So you've got to be pretty concise there. I can barely say 3 words. Anyhow,
You should have asked for 140 characters.
that's right. That was before any of that. But yeah, the good news came to my house that I made the 10 finalists, which gave me the opportunity that I would now get a season ticket to the Marlins. So I'm ecstatic. I don't care about winning the contest. I've got season tickets to go see the Marlins that year. So then we went down and they interviewed everybody individually, and Bill Beck was part of that interview. And then I was fortunate enough to win. And that's in the book how that happened. And Sam, I told Sam how that occurred and everything. And it's kind of fun. That was a good memory too.
And Bill Beck really had a great relationship with the players too. He was very close with the players. He wasn't a standoffish owner. He was very much a people person.
I remember another celebrity at the Orange Bowl game, Dagmar. Nobody's ever heard of Dagmar probably. She was a vivacious blonde, and at 13 years of age, you remember that.
She left an impression on you.
Are the current team, the Marlins, are they supporting the book, offering it at the stadium and whatnot?
I've been working with them, but so far they haven't bid on that yet. Trying to get it through, but so far not. I actually saw, I don't know if did anybody from the Marlins organization make it out today? Because I invited several people, but I don't think they made it out today. Okay.
So Tim, did you read the book and what did you think about it?
Well, I really enjoyed it. I like the best part of the book for me was the interviews or the comments from the players. You know, there's a history of the games and what occurred in each game, etc. But there were also the commentaries from the different players that Sam interviewed, and then there are comments that I made in there as well. But primarily, it's the players that I recognize, and I didn't realize this, and it's not really in the book part. But Ben Hopkins, who was the one who hit the home run, was an NFL official for like 25 years and actually officiated in the Super Bowl. He was a starting second baseman for the Marlins. And he also was an All-American, and Sam told me this, an All-American football player at the University of Texas.
Right.
And when he played, I mean, I don't know these things, and he wore glasses, and there's a picture of him without his glasses, and I didn't recognize him at all. But that's also in that Diamond Club there. There's three players. There's Woody Smith and Bob Michelada and Ben Tompkins. Bob Michelada was a shortstop. Woody Smith was a third baseman. Ed Boucher was a first baseman the first year. When Sonny Hurst was alive, I would exchange Christmas cards with him. And I would send him the starting lineup on my Christmas card. So I can tell you exactly who was who there. And they had, in the outfield, they had Bob Bowman in right field. They had Cal Abrams, who was coming down from the major leagues. At one point was in center field. And a fellow named Larry Novak played a lot of left field. There were other players that started at the time, but those are the ones I remember. Don Cardwell pitched a no-hitter for, was it the Cubs or something?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, Don Cardwell was on that team. He sat next to me on the plane to Havana when I got airsick, and he kept teasing me the whole time while we were going down. What's in the bag, Tim? What's in the bag?
And all three of the Dalton Gang, they were all pitchers.
Those guys were hilarious. Those three guys were absolutely hilarious. And again, for a 13-year-old kid, when we were in Havana, they asked me. Somebody asked me to go up to their room to get something, and it was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. After they had, we had played the night before, and all these guys went out partying, I'm sure. And they were still laying in bed. They were completely out of it. It's like 1 in the afternoon. And so I got the maid to get me open up the door, and they were very upset with that. So when they came down later, they took me and threw me in the pool. I said, what's the big idea coming up to the Big Three's room before 4 o'clock in the afternoon? And they threw me in the pool. They were nuts.
One thing about the Dalton Gang, and this is a story, when they were with in Syracuse in '55, the year before they came to Miami, they were traveling to Havana to play the Sugar Kings. And Skeeter Newsom was an old-time ball player from back in the 40s, was the manager. So they go down to Havana, and Skeeter has a team meeting. He gets all the players together, and he says, we're in Havana. They send these girls out as plants, and they try to distract the ball players and, get you to go out and party. And then Skeeter said, those guys, they ran out the clubhouse faster than you could believe. They were out the door, practically broke the hinges off the door to get out to find the plants. And that was kind of the Dalton Gang. That's how they were. They were just wild and crazy guys, as Tim will attest.
Jim Owens, Seth Moorhead, and Dick Farrell, Turk Farrell. And supposedly, Jim Owens, a story about him when he went up to the Phillies is they took him into the office finally, because he was a pretty hard drinker. And they said, Jim, you're going to have to make up your mind whether you want to be a ball player or whether you want to just waste your time with all this drinking and stuff. You're going to have to decide. And supposedly Owen said, can I have a week to think about it?
That was a Dalton Gang.
Thank you, gentlemen. Tim, Sam, Mr. Mayor, thank you so much. For those of you watching online, don't forget, give us a call here at the store. We'll get a book for you. We'll get these gentlemen to sign it for you. Those of you sitting here, you're now required to buy 5 copies apiece. We really appreciate you being here. Please buy a copy of the book. They're for sale. The gentleman will sign them right over here.